Welcome to Aren't Asians All Alike. The idea is you will listen and find for yourself, oh, no, actually, wow, very different perspectives. You will hear my opinions unfiltered, nothing to lose, and I will highlight other Asian American Native Hawaiian voices and also allies. For instance, coming up, we're going to talk to a white former police captain, well, actually where I grew up. He was there for 30 years, and we're going to get the insights because he was training cops, and we'll hear kind of about that culture. We're also going to talk to a mixed heritage young Asian American woman who's lived in both worlds, both in Seattle, but also in Taipei. And what's that like? Because a lot of times you don't belong in either place. Today, we are talking to a thoracic surgeon in San Francisco. And we're to learn about that connection of lung cancer and Asian Americans because it is the number one killer of Asian Americans. And why is it that a non-smoker, let's say like myself, gets lung cancer, hopefully not me or you, so often? So over half of the lung cancer patients of Asian American women's didn't smoke. So why? So he is looking into this study and to try and figure it out and to solve for it. So do take notes and think of how you can help. What kind of connections you have? How we can raise awareness? I am Jolene Jang, and I'm broadcasting from Seattle on the land of the Duwamish. I am Japanese, Chinese, and Swedish. I more identify as a Japanese side because that's where my relatives, that's who I know. And I am wearing a white top, and I have brown hair since it's the Swedish side. And we are so lucky today to be speaking with Dr. Jeffrey Velotta and Angie Gin. And they're going to tell us about the connection between lung cancer and Asian Americans. Dr. Jeffrey Velotta, thoracic surgeon, can you do a little self-intro for us?
Yeah, absolutely, Jolene. Hi, I'm Jeff Velotta. I'm a thoracic surgeon here at Kaiser Permanente in Northern California. We're based out of Oakland, and also I teach clinically over at UCSF in the Kaiser School of Medicine here in San Francisco. So been here for about 10 years and born and raised in the Bay Area in the East Bay. So happy to be on.
So tell us about what we call it, project. I'm obviously a layperson, so I don't know the language. Can you tell us about your study?
Yeah, they are essentially projects. You're right, Jolene. So what we've been really focusing on, what my main focus recently has been on lung cancer in Asian Americans. And specifically, what I wanted to kind of go over, what I think is that unmet need or hidden health disparity really is Asian non-smoking women. So that's who we're seeing hit really hard. And so some of the research that I'm doing that we just kind of recently published that we really want people to be aware of and your listeners to be aware of is that out of all lung cancer is decreasing in every race, ethnicity, men, women, smoking, non-smoking, except it's increasing in Asian American women non-smokers by 2% per year. The only one. So everybody assumes that lung cancer is gone to the past, the Marlboro Man, all that stuff. You don't see that anymore, right? You don't see people like, yeah, that is decreasing. That type of lung cancer is decreasing. But we're seeing a new kind that's been going, and it's been going on, Jolene, since about in the early 2000s, we even knew about it. It's been over 20 years we've known about this, yet nobody's heard of it yet, except it's been going on for 24 years. We first started noticing that in Asia. They first started noticing, and even in the United States. But finally, I'm hoping to bring to light that this is in.
Okay, so hold up here. So 20 years, people have known about it, like in the medical field, so that it's increasing. Has it been increasing since the 2000s?
No, we've never known about the increasing, but we've known that's been a phenomenon with Asian women and non-smoking lung cancer. We started seeing that in the early 2000s, but it wasn't studied. It was like, oh, no biggie, and it's been going on.
Do you think, I don't know if you're allowed to say, but do you think if it was white women, do you think that there'd be a difference in terms of the attention?
I do think it would make a difference that if this was white women or if this was breast cancer, which doesn't have the stigma associated with lung cancer, smoking, even though this is non-smoking, I think it would make a huge difference. I do say, because we can speak freely here, these are my personal opinions. So I do think, though, the Asian community is lucky in somewhat way. I do think if this was a different race ethnicity, I think this would go even further unnoticed. Let's just put it that way.
So in terms of now that you are addressing this, you and your team, um, why now? Or what was that spark to get into this?
Oh, I love that. It's been a while since I've remembered that. So it actually started for me in 2017, when even though I'm Asian and kind of known about this phenomenon, I started getting young women in my age group. At the time, I was in my 30s, or late 30s, and these women, that I knew, colleagues, were getting lung cancer, and they were Asian, non-smoking. And I was like, ooh, this hits home, right? When people, your colleagues, are starting to get this and they're my age. And I had to treat them now because I do lung cancer surgery. That's, one of my main jobs. So I'm taking care of these women that are my age, that have kids my age and everything. And then we started seeing it more and more and more. And then I said, well, this is, so it hit me personally. And then I was like, well, let's study it. And so we started back in 2018 studying it over 2018 till now. And that's where we saw in all of Northern California, because we studied all the Kaiser population in Northern California. That's where we saw the incidence in these women were increasing, and nobody else was. And so it was not just what I was seeing clinically, but it was what was truly happening in all of Northern California.
So this was your initiation. You saw this. It was a personal connection because these are your colleagues. Wow, this is ridiculous. Now it's personal, and let's do something about it. Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. Correct. And then when I started doing stuff about it, Jolene, sorry, I know I talk more than you. I'm sorry.
That's the idea. That's what we're here for. I'm just here to get you to point you in the right direction.
Then after that, I started noticing, as I started kind of speaking about this on the local news and stuff, I had family friends they were really close family friends that I had no idea had lung cancer, and they were afflicted by this, but they don't want to talk about it. We can get into that, the whole Asian cultural thing, but I was like, what? And then I was like, I didn't realize. So then I started getting affected by family friends, not direct family yet, thankfully yet, but direct family friends. And I was like, this is outrageous. We need to figure this out. Why are you being diagnosed so late? Because they tend to be, the other thing that we found in our research study, Jolene, is that the Asian women that are diagnosed, that are not smokers, they're more likely to be diagnosed with stage 4, where there's less treatment options than if you're diagnosed early, where I just chop it out, right? Take it out surgically. And so I knew there was some issues, and sure enough, we found that clinically, I see Asian women being diagnosed later because they're not caught early enough because nobody thinks they're going to have cancer. And then that's what we also saw research-wise. These women were not caught early.
I can see that because I think people are like, oh, you're so athletic, you're thin, you eat well, you're not going to have any problems ever. And I feel like I get that from different people and doctors too, like, oh, you're fine. It's like, I want to be proactive, but I think many doctors just like, oh, you're fine, are more reactive than proactive. So let's get into some of those stats, some of those striking facts about the cancer. So you talked about how lung cancer is decreasing for everybody, but Asian American women or Asian Americans?
Asian American women, it actually is men too. Asian American,
okay.
but non-smoking men and women. It's just on the high, there's higher amounts of Asian women non-smokers than there are Asian men. So all comers, it's mostly Asian women, but Asian American men and women that are non-smokers, that is increasing. And the statistic that's easy to remember for anybody, it's increasing by 2% per year. So it's not, I don't want to get into the statistics of it, but for you out there, we're back in statistics, incidence versus prevalence, we are talking about incidence. So we're measuring by year. So that's why it's so startling, 2% by year. So this is not just flat or over a long period of time. This is dramatically, or so-called dramatically, 2% increasing per year. And that's what is the frightening thing, because that's going to continue to rise until we do something about it. And I have some ideas about that.
So lung cancer, is it right that that's the biggest killer of Asian Americans? Is that right?
It is. Out of all race ethnicity groups, Latin, Black, white, Asian American is the only one where cancer is the number one killer. It's heart disease in every other race ethnicity. And then when you break it down by cancer type, it's lung cancer that overall kills all Asian American men and women. It's the highest mortality.
So this seems like it's such a big deal, such a big discovery. Yes, it was happening in the 2000s, but now you have data to show this is happening with non-smokers. Isn't this a big deal?
It's a huge deal, but it's a bigger deal, Jolene, on what I trying to reach is other populations other than Northern California, Southern California, right? California and Hawaii have the two biggest, and then Seattle is up there too, number three, but the highest Asian population. So we're within our own population, the Bay Area, which makes up the Bay Area has the most Asian American overall, South Asian, East Asian, everything, more than white people in the Bay Area. But even in my own area, I'm still educating people, even though the majority are Asians, but they have no idea about this. And so California, I think, is more aware and more open to this could be a big idea or a big deal. So they get shocked when I talk about this. But on the East Coast, when I go to meetings and everything in the Southwest, the Southeast, it's not on their radar because they don't have Asians there, right? Or as many Asians there, but it still afflicts Asians everywhere, not just even if you're in Nebraska, you could still have it. It doesn't matter. It's just that there's just not as many Asians. So that's what I kind of notice is that it's a huge deal for us here. And it makes sense because we see a lot of Asians when I go to Costco. But I can imagine on the East Coast and, or I've been there, I trained in the East Coast that it was very different atmosphere about what was important and what wasn't. It was a little bit more black, white than Asian, black, white.
So what do you think the number needs to be? So 2%, but as that compiles, what do you think that needs to be in order to get the attention of NIH or the other entities who could actually do something and do a push? Because I report, excuse me, on attacks of Asian Americans, and I track the news, and I'm looking at Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders that are in the headlines, and it is very rare. So when Asian is attacked, we don't hear about that on the news because nobody cares. It's a business and people don't care enough about Asians. So it has to go on the Next Shark or Asian American News or NBC Asian America. Is this similar to what I'm sensing, that because it's a population that's smaller and people aren't as familiar or attached to people from Asian descent? Is that, where do you...
Julie, you're right, about pretty much all right. The only thing that's really interesting is that Asian Americans, and because I do a lot of this epidemiologic research and stuff, so I have to know these stats. Not that I think about them all the time, but Asian Americans actually are the fastest growing ethnic group, more than even Latin in the whole United States. We're a big force to reckon with. So you would imagine that we're a huge force. We're right after white people. It's us, So why in the United States, and why is this going unrecognized? And I think that's to your point. And there is a patient breast cancer advocate by the name of Susan Shinagawa, another Japanese female, that always would talk about this. And she would say, our problems, meaning our Asians, our problems never go noticed. They go unrecognized. They never make the headlines. And that's because what I think we need to make a difference, it's not the research. Even if I did, so Jolene, even if I tell you 10%, this paper that I gave out with 2%, which is a lot, that's higher than anybody's ever shown, the first in the country to show that. And this just came out last year. And this was in a major journal like Chest, which is one of the major journals. This went unrecognized. The only way I can get this out to the lay people is if I go on one of these talk shows. Nobody says anything about it. Although it got published in a big medical journal, nobody's going to read it, right? And so what we really need, and it sounds bad, I don't want this to happen, but what we really need is a major Asian figure to speak out. Whether they get lung cancer, whether they have a family member with lung cancer, or somebody, the Asians don't speak out. And that's what that's what our legislature wants. They want somebody like you, vocal, but just yelling from the treetops. And there's no Asian that I know in this field, and I know the field pretty well for lung cancer, that we've been able to find to do that. There is no Barack Obama of lung cancer. There is no Oprah, and so I think that's kind of what we miss.
Dr. Velotta, we are going to find one. You're the only voice right now, mostly.
There's a few of us, but I'm more vocal about it. And it even hurts me though, Jolene, because I'm a male. I'm Asian American, but I do think that, it helps. Like, females don't think differently of me, but we don't have a lot of females also raising awareness as much. I think for whatever cultural reason, I think we that would help.
So with this study, let's go back to this study. When you were doing this study, did you get pushback of like, well, why are you doing this study? It's, some percent of the population, American population, all lives matter. I mean, like what kind of pushback did you
Oh,
get?
I love it. I love it because it's actually true. So I won't say by who, because you always turn these grants in, right? You have to turn research projects in for grants to get funding to do the research. And I will tell you, I was rejected a few times before I actually got this study even like to even start the study, not to see what we're going to do. Like you have to start with a proposal. So I got rejected multiple times because you're absolutely right. The reviewers' comments were, this is a niche population. This is a population that's just a small little population. Although I'm talking about, I studied all Asians, right? So for cancer, it's like not niche, right? Cancer, Asia, like these are big things in our society. But to the reviewers, I had to really push hard. So I finally got it after the fourth time and I did multiple different grants, and finally I got that. So that got me in the door. So I think it wasn't easy to do. And then to answer your second question, this is where I think it's interesting. I don't think people tell me to my face, Jolene, but I do think that some people are like, oh, here he goes talking about Asians. Well, what about Black Lives Matter? What about Latin? What about LGBT and stuff? And I think that's all great, but I can't focus on everything. And I can't relate to Black Lives Matter as much or LGBT because, that's not me, but I am Asian and I know this field of lung cancer and I know my patients, my Asian patients pretty well. And so I can go on that. But I will tell you, there are some people that I think go, oh, here's the Asian guy again talking about Asian rights or whatever. And it's not that at all. It's just that I do think it gets a little of that instead of Black Lives Matter, so I think there is a little bit of that too. So you're right.
Inside, I'm grrr. And I think of, there was a show, Turning Red. Did you see that show? It was an animation, and it was a Chinese American, and she had to go to the temple and do all this stuff after class and everything, and she never could hang out. And it showed kind of a like immigrant child, and she also got her period, and it had this. It was really interesting animated. It was a really good, universally, a lot of people watched it that are white that said it was a great show. But I remember there was a pastor that saying it was demonic and it's so limited. Why couldn't they have a white person do it? A white person story. And it was just similar. So I guess I would like the listeners to kind of hear that no matter what industry, there is discrimination, and we need our allies to fight harder. We need to find, we need Asian voices also to be loud and bring in their white colleagues. That's so frustrating. Thank you so much for your work. Let's talk about, you had mentioned that your family friend had lung cancer. Can you share, like, you didn't know about it? Can you share with our audience kind of the reasons why you didn't know about it?
Yeah, they wanted to hide it. In a lot of Asian cultures, and as you know, Asians, all of us are not all the same, right? We're very different. Chinese is different than Vietnamese, which is different than, among the Japanese, Korean. But a lot of the similar cultural values are similar. And some of that is specifically with women, family friends. They're the monarch of the family. They have to keep it together. They're sick, but they keep moving on. They need to help the husband. They need to help the kids, and they don't want people to focus on them. And then they also don't want people to know. A lot of times they don't want other people to know. They don't want family members to know they have cancer. The big C word. It's like a stigma associated with it. And then when you talk lung cancer, everybody thinks it's related to smoking, right? Everybody thinks, oh, you smoker, you deserve it. So that stigma on top of cultural values, and biggest one that we see in Northern California, you probably see this in Seattle too. Surprisingly, many people of us think that Asians are like you and I that speak nice English, right? Well, the majority of Asians, specifically even in the Bay Area, that live in like a nice house, like right down the street or a decent, don't speak English. Or if they do, they don't feel comfortable speaking English. My wife's family is Vietnamese, and my wife's Vietnamese, and she's fluent in English and Vietnamese, but they still speak in Vietnamese a lot. And this is like a very, well-off family. So the language barrier on top of the cultural stigma of lung cancer, and on top of the mom or the wife has to take care of the family and keep it all together, and those pressures put them in the background. And if they're in the background, nobody will ever know. Like, I didn't know about my family friend that had lung cancer for the past year, and I am a lung cancer, and they knew that I'm a lung cancer quote unquote expert. They finally reached out after a year, but I would have wanted to know earlier, because there were some things that I would have thought that we could have done differently. And if they would have just asked, and I'm a family friend, but they didn't want to bother me.
Are they Japanese American?
They are.
Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah, of course, but still.
Yeah, with my parents have some ailments. They don't tell me. I'm like, is that a new thing? Why are you limping?
Yeah.
The
limping. Yeah. My mom has a limp right now too. I know.
Yeah. And dad's taken you to the doctor. Oh, for what?
Yeah.
What is this? Right. And it's like, they don't want to be a burden. I have mixed, Japanese and Chinese, but they don't want to be a burden. And I was lucky to be raised to be my own person, and I don't have to take care of them, or I respect them, but I had to be taught with my ex-Vietnamese husband to respect them like Asian wise, but otherwise, they don't want to bother me. So I think that's something for our audience members to understand. East Asians don't want to be a bother, and they are there to be loyal to their family and their friends and do everything for everybody else. And if there's anything left, okay, self-care maybe. So, well, that's frustrating. Tell us what one of your big ideas is.
Well, I think what we were talking about was that more of these women, than non-smokers, are being diagnosed with stage 4, which is not as good. That means the cancer is spread to different places where there's treatment not as good. You want to catch it early, just like you do for breast cancer, cervical cancer, colon cancer. We do it for lung cancer, but it's only in 50 to 80-year-olds that have a smoking history. But I just talked to you about Asian women usually don't have a smoking history, yet they're still getting lung cancer more than others. So the new endeavor is essentially what I'm working on right now, and I have a few proposals out. But again, back to the roadblocks, the barriers. It's not like they're welcoming open hands to this, even though this is kind of a novel study. I'm having pushback, but is to do lung cancer screening, but for Asian women over a certain age, and 40 is kind of where we see that inflection point. 40 and above is when we start to see it dramatically increase, or a lot more increase, and with a family history. What we found preliminarily in the newest, I haven't published this yet, but we just recently looked at Asian women with a non-smoking with a family history of lung cancer, and at least one family member have an increased risk or increased incidence of getting lung cancer themselves than somebody that doesn't. So rather than just say, let's screen all Asian women, right? That's not feasible. The government's not going to want that. The healthcare is not going to want that. But if you're over a certain age with a family history, say over 40, and your mom has family history of lung cancer or is diagnosed with lung cancer, that person should get a CT scan, just like we can go through the normal CT scan process that we do right now that's covered by Medicare, by the government. So these women should be screened, and they did that in Taiwan, and they did find a lung cancer detection rate that was higher than what we saw from other studies that with smokers. So I know it can work. The question is, it worked in Taiwan because 99% of the population are Chinese. Will it work in the United States and our Asian American women? And our preliminary results, at least in the Bay Area, for women that have already been diagnosed with lung cancer that are Asian, show that more of them were diagnosed with lung cancer, had a family history of lung cancer. So why not? Let's do it here. Let's start it now and do it with a blood test, which we don't have enough time for, but there's now new data for starting with blood tests to get. So if you imagine if you had a blood test and you got a blood test screening test, draw your blood, they can check for different DNA molecules that are associated in your DNA with lung cancer. And if it's a hit, then you also have a higher chance of having lung cancer. So I think incorporating these new technologies is where I want to go with this population.
Because that seems cheap, right? A blood test, then a full scan. So that seems doable, right?
Right. It seems doable, but it's not prime time yet. It's being evaluated in clinical trials, the blood test. The CT scan is prime time. That is our gold standard right now. Gold standard for detecting lung cancer is a CT scan.
And then side question. So my grandpa on my dad's side was a smoker, came over from China. And so he died of lung cancer, but he was a smoker. So would that have anything to do with me? I mean,
it is a risk factor. We think it's a higher risk factor if it was lung cancer, if he was diagnosed with lung cancer at an earlier age. regardless of smoking. So I don't know if you know when he was diagnosed, but either way, that is a risk factor in you.
I think, yeah, I feel like he just died. Like I think it's 50 or 60,
Right.
and I don't know that he went to the doctor actually.
Right. That is, so to answer your personal question, yes, that is considered so in my study or clinically, if you were to come to me, I would say that you would have a slightly higher risk.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, this is a perfect.
But yes, that is considered a family history of lung cancer. It's strong. And then the other thing I didn't get into, it's stronger on your maternal side.
Okay.
So for the women that have mom or grandma, that's a stronger connection. And then multiple. So more than one, we call it multiplex families. So more than one, even stronger. But with that being said, you're still at higher risk than somebody that never had a family history of lung cancer.
Well, I was just texting my mom earlier, or my mom and my dad. I'm like, hey, did grandpa die of lung? Because he died way a long time before I was born. He was like, yeah. I was like, oh, it's a good connection.
Yeah.
So good to know. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So in order to get this study going, what kind of support do you need? You needed the influencers before, but in order to get this going, what kind of support do you need, and how do you think you can get it?
Right. So two ways. One is the government, the NIH, which is the gold standard. But until Congress, until everything changes, that's not like where we make this a priority, which it's not. The majority of all clinical trials and all NIH funding, less than 0.17%, are on Asian Americans. So that's
just repeat that. And so that's less. That's a fraction of
0.17% of all NIH clinical trials are related to trials related around Asian Americans.
And does that mean that with clinical trials that Asian Americans need to volunteer, or that NIH needs to recruit?
It's both. Okay. It's both. It's the studies that we're submitting are rejected because they're Asian Americans. So we don't have the studies that involve Asian Americans. It's too focused for them, too narrow for them. And it is the other, what you just said, the latter. The clinical trials that we do have, and the clinical trials for lung cancer screening that make it possible for us to have lung cancer screening CT scans that decrease mortality, none of them are Asians. So we need Asians to go into enroll into clinical trials. But guess what? What's the other barrier? Same barrier why Asians don't speak out about them having lung cancer. They don't like to be in clinical trials. They often will not go towards clinical trial. They don't have time. They don't speak the language. It's usually white, affluent men and women that are in clinical trials. So a lot of the studies that we do off of lung cancer or screening is based off of white men smoking. And so that's why screening right now is only for men and women that are over the age of 50 to 80 that smoke or have a history of smoking. But what happens if we had a bunch of them that were Asian women in there? We know that Asian women and women in general that get lung cancer have a way less smoking history. So women, not even Asian women, Black women, white women, Latin women, they usually have way less of a smoking history than men that get it. So we know smoking is not the whole deal. And that's what we're trying to figure out next, which is looking at, what are all the causal factors or what are causing these cancers in these Asian women.
Okay. So what I think you're saying is we need Asian Americans to be in those studies, and we need NIH to be aware that, hey, 7.2% of the American population is Asian American. Let's at least try and increase that number so we can try and save all lives and create solutions.
Absolutely. And that's what the NIH has tried to do. They've even broken up into a little branch of like NIH Asian American Studies. And there are some of my colleagues that have gotten some grants for that. And they're looking at, different things. And because remember, there's other kinds of cancers in Asians, cervical cancer, head and neck cancer, things like that. So that's been good, but it's still a small amount compared to how much Asians represent in the United States. I mean, it's like that for the other ethnicities too, but still, all we're trying to say is we know that there is a big push for, Black African-American research and, equality. And I get that. And I'm all for that. But just know that Asians don't all look like you or me, like the model minority myth, and that not all of us, some of us have issues. Some of us are stereotypes that we go through under that too. And so we should be considered also in a group where we can get some extra help too, other than like looping us in with white people when in reality, we don't get the same treatment, right? And so that's the whole model minority myth that you don't necessarily see with Latin and Black. I'm not trying to say that we're any worse off than Latin or Black or anything, but we are a third ethnicity, right? If you a third major ethnicity, and until that kind of happens, it's going to be a while. So until then, the sidestep, and this is not a plug for industry or anything like that, because this is not my thing, but industry, pharmaceutical companies, the ones that have money,
Yeah.
that they are interested. Now, they may not be interested for all the right reasons, right? They have to
Doesn't
come out,
matter.
right?
Like
Doesn't
if they're
matter,
going to do
though.
the work, like
That's
whatever, save the
question.
people.
Exactly. That's why we already know that. So that's the way I'm able to get some of these Asian studies through, because there are some of the pharmaceutical companies that have drugs that specifically target protein factors in Asian American women that get lung cancer. So that's helpful, but at least that's something. At least they found something that helps our women, that helps them get better. That's why they live longer with lung cancer, even though they get diagnosed later, because of this new drug. So if we can catch them earlier, then we can, more women could get lung. I mean, more women can be caught early where there's better treatment. And so that is kind of my fallback plan. And so otherwise, I'd be retired by the time the NIH decided to do my study, and more people will die or get diagnosed later. So that has been my fallback, is to get money from industry, and with no interest, with no conflict of interest. They give you the money, and then I get to do my study because it funds my research analysts and the CT scans and the CT scan costs. So that's currently what I've had to do. So you scratch and claw, Jolene. You scratch and claw to get there.
Yes, I'm familiar. Well, this is a good segue to invite Angie in. So we're talking about some struggles and what to do and how to raise awareness. Angie, can you tell us about your background and how you are involved in raising awareness?
My name is Angie Gin. I'm the portfolio manager for automation in Kaiser Permanente. And on top of that, so I volunteer as the Northern California co-chair for Asian Pacific Islander Employee Association at a Kaiser. So this is how I got connected with the work Dr. Velotta is doing. I wish he gave me heads up how difficult this advocacy work, is. Yeah.
No, but we need you. So what is your role? What are you doing to, and why were you interested, by the way?
Yes, so I'm a non-smoking Asian woman. So, I want to know more about what it is. I never heard about non-smoking Asian women can be, candidate for lung cancer before I know Dr. Velotta. I always thought, oh, lung cancer is a smoker thing. It's like, oh, you smoke and then eventually you will get lung cancer. But for non-smoker, I saw that's just not my thing. And personally speaking, social justice and equity, diversity, inclusion is always something in my core value. So that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years here. Personal plus my value, and then connect to Dr. Velotta's work with me.
So what types of things do you do to bring attention?
So I do advocacy more on the community side and the resources side. So because my role for the employee association at Kaiser, so I have the opportunity to attend different kinds of events and the summit. So I spread the words regarding this population really needs attention, not only among the physicians and nurses, but also the general public, like our own Asian community, as well as the policymakers too. So trying to see what resources that we can bring to Dr. Velotta to support his research, and what kind of events we can collaborate with our nonprofit organizations in the Asian community to bring awareness to people. Yeah, so those are the things how I have been supporting Dr. Velotta.
So as the president of the business resource group at Kaiser, you're talking to those Asian Americans, and within Kaiser, branching out to other groups to make sure, at least inside of Kaiser, that they're aware and hope that they can also spread the word to their colleagues. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And also, Angie is the reason that we are here and discovered this. And I wouldn't say I have a big mouth, but I will do my best to get the word out. I hope there will be resources, both Angie and Dr. Velotta, with the different, where can we share from, both layperson language of resources, and also for medical folks to learn about this. So hopefully you can email me some of that. Regarding, I was just looking around at American Lung Association. I see that they have a little a post about Asian Americans and lung health. Do we need more? Like, is that common? Are they aware? Like, what's the connection? And I, layperson here, so.
The American Lung Association actually is the only one that does a good job of breaking down by race, ethnicity, men and women, looking at different statistics, whether it's cancer incidence, death, survivorship, screening, all of that. But that is kind of a nice independent nonprofit organization. Yet there's thousands of those. And then you have the government ones, and then you have all the academic center ones and the hospital ones. And the majority of those do not break it down by race, ethnicity, and specifically focusing on certain, for example, if we're going to talk Asian Americans, the majority do not focus on Asian Americans. So while that is good that the ALA, American Lung Association, does that, it's kind of you have to find it. I mean, I'm glad you found it, but you were researching it, right? Like, you have to really embed it. It's not going to be for the layperson. Even for me to find it, it's hard for me to go find in it when I use it for my talks or whatnot. And so it's good, but it's kind of hidden. And until it's brought out to everybody, I think we're still, a far ways off.
So if we look at who are, I would just think, oh, there's got to be an association, because I work with associations as an event planner and stuff. So I was like, oh, there's got to be an association for this. So that's the first that I went to. Who is is the NIH, who is the authority that needs to have this? And then maybe like what's the Associated Press for news? Associated Press. That's where things start from, and then all the news get from there. Who's the authority that needs to know and publish this? And I guess that's a question.
So Angie may have her thoughts. My thoughts are, and she's going to have different barriers than I may have, or lack of barriers. What I've noticed, and again, we haven't pre-talked about this, but it's the Asian associations. That's what we need to buy into. So if we talk about Japanese people, right? So you don't know JSA because JSA is here, right? But you know the JACL, right? JACL, we all know that. And then in terms of, here we have multiple different Asian Pacific associations. We have 1 million Asian American associations. I'll be honest. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Angie and I go to a lot of these events and we do all these things and we give our spiel, and I will tell you, they give a heartfelt yes, yes, yes. But when we follow up with them, because Angie's hardcore, Angie's like me, that's why we're on. She'll follow up and bug them and whatever. It's crickets. It's crickets. And these are our own people speaking to you in the face at an event, at a gala, whatever, including our mayor, which I'm trying to work on our mayor. We're going to go see our mayor July 31st. She's going to finally have to listen to our mayor is a Hmong American Asian female in her 30s.
Yeah.
Shanked out, right? So I'm going to go after her. No, in a good way. But
yes.
All these Asian American associations that are high up, it is not on their radar. It is clearly not on the radar. And I agree. Don't get me wrong. So mental health was on the radar this year on a smaller one. I agree. Mental health in Asians, that is an unmet need. Man, I didn't realize how many Asian Americans suffer from depression, bipolar, and all this. And I understand it's a big deal. But there's got to be enough of us or enough associations to go around where one of them will pick lung cancer in Asian women. We haven't had one of them. If I could just get one to say, hey, we're going to back you. We're going to give you 50 grand to go do your study, your lung cancer screening. Or we're going to say, hey, we're going to have a talk and we're going to just keep inviting you back and we're just going to pound this through. Or they're going to answer my emails when I respond to them. We haven't had that. I haven't had that once. And Angie has introduced me to a lot of Asian groups. There's been a lot of
okay, well, that's positive. I think that's solvable. Angie, do you want to add to that?
Yes, it's really difficult. Like earlier you guys talk about looking at, like people who are not Asian Pacific Islanders, looking at Asian populations, thinking you're doing fine. And we also, sometimes run into the model minority challenge within our own community as well, especially for Asian women. Because, women who are people of color usually is the bottom of the bottom. And they just become background and become invisible. Like even though the whole family got taken care of by women, in Asian culture, but it's just, when it comes to their health, the whole family is, sometimes it's invisible. And, like Dr. Velotta and I, we talk to politicians, we talk to policymakers, people from the public sector, federal government, our own Asian, community. It's just really hard to push things through. That's, my main difficulty and frustration. Even with, I go to events where are held for recognizing women contribution in our society in California, and some of the the board members are Asian American women. So I thought, I can have, this is my people. It could be a little bit easier for me to get my message through, right? Not really, just walk away from me. So that's just really hard. I don't understand why it is so difficult, because I thought, doing advocacy work for lung cancer for non-smoking Asian women should be an easy thing, right? It's life or death, because it's the number one cancer killer for human being, right? Regardless which country you are from. Not really. Everybody has their priority, right? So.
Okay. Well, I when I look at this, and I'm from the outside, you all know the reality, but I'm thinking raising awareness for this to Asians has got to be easier than advocating for Asian Americans to white people. That's just got to be so much easier. So, and that's what I do. I talk to the white people. So this does not look like as difficult as a problem. So I think gamifying and having like the stats in a gamified format, let's say you get 1 minute or 2 minutes at something. I think it's presenting in some sort of way, and then having a sign up and having influencers say, oh, I'm going to sign up to be in that clinical trial because my community is important to me, or I will be a lay person to lay navigator to help people. So I'm in a group, a BRG, Business Resource Group for Washington State, and I just spoke to them. And so I will talk to it's a pretty big group, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, and let them know. And we'll kind of see who to talk to get them going on this. I think all the state BRGs, I don't know if they ever meet all together, or maybe that's something that Washington State can run to try and get the heads of them to do something. And then the Asian American Foundation, you all know that one? So this was founded, the Asian American Foundation was, because none of the federal money goes to Asian Americans. It's, less than 1% also, similar. So this is Asian Americans who've donated. Some of the big folks out there who are heads of companies have donated to create this fund to fund all these Asian American groups. And so I put in the chat here, Spring Health. I was watching, they do an incredible, they have lots of resources across all industries. And I put in the chat, Spring Health. I listened to this panel the other day with these 4 hotshot women, one at Coca-Cola, one at Unilever, and one at Spring Health. So the Spring Health, April Coe, she's like 30 or something, and she's raised like billions of dollars for mental health. And this is in 200 countries around the world. So it's mental health, it's different. But I think, connecting with April Coe, somebody who cares, and some of these folks that were on these panels on TAF, I think that's where it's at, because they distribute and have connection to all these other Asian American groups. And I think, let's see, too bad May is over because that's really the only time Asian Americans get attention. But yeah, so Angie, what kind of PR are you looking for to get Dr. Velotta? Like, what was helpful?
Yeah, so any, visible events that Dr. Velotta can speak to, either Asian community or our allies, right? Especially among the, professionals in healthcare space. So physicians, they will know when a non-smoking Asian woman who has consistent coughs go into their office, that is possible they're having lung cancer symptoms, instead of just, keep giving them painkillers and ignoring them. So that can be one thing. And then the other one would be, like what you said, foundations which can give out grants, right? Which can sponsor Dr. Velotta's researches and make it more visible.
Thank you. And then regarding legislation, what kind of legislation is out there, or do you need to initiate?
From my part of it, from the medical part of it, it's a little harder for legislation because it's easier. What I'm working on for legislation right now is just lung cancer screening in certain individuals that are already covered. So it's not like it's more to make aware that we have to change some of the current guidelines that the government, that legislation has. But that's for all the population. I think that's what I've been working on for the legislation part of it. I'm giving a talk in San Diego on June 23rd, but it's about the lung cancer screening disparities, which is basically nobody gets lung cancer screening, not just Asians, but nobody, like even the smokers don't get lung cancer screening. So that's a whole different topic. But that's kind of what we're doing for legislation, trying to say, well.
So hold up. So so that's for everyone?
Correct.
Okay. Well, then I think that one, everyone does care. It's when it's Asian specific that, not so much caring, right?
Correct. This
so
one's for everybody.
Yeah. So I think that is one where you talk to the Hispanic associations and maybe NAACP. And I think that's where you tap into the different groups to try and be a coalition.
So in state of California, we do have a healthcare committee, which, raise bills awareness and also, create legislation or policy guidelines as well. So I'm hoping that I can be connected with somebody from that committee, so we can have them to listen to Dr. Velotta and also his research and become aware that this has been a challenge, in Asian Pacific Islander community, and it has been taking a lot of lives from us as well. Then we can see what is the next step they can be able to action on or things like that.
I was going to say, which would lead to the next thing was you're probably wondering, well, what can you do if you know that it's increasing? Yeah. You know that more women are diagnosed, all that stuff. But I also told you that more women are diagnosed way later, where treatment isn't as good, and they still end up dying, right? They may last, that's the thing when you have stage 4 lung cancer. The misnomer in the medical community is that Asian women with lung cancer do live longer. They do live longer because they have EGFR positive mutations, and there's a drug that you give them, but they don't realize that they'll still soon mutate, and they usually die. Instead of dying in 6 to 9 months, they die in 3 to 4 years. But you're still a 35-year-old woman dying, right? And so that's the misnomer in the medical community. Oh, she's Asian, she'll be fine because she's going to have EGFR, versus the black smoker's not. And that's true. The black smoker's not. He's going to die earlier. But still, that's the misnomer, though, that Asians aren't getting it. Well, in the first place, she was a 35-year-old non-smoker. So she should, anyway. So the call to action would be, well, how do you get it earlier? We know they're high risk. We know it's increasing. Let's screen them and screen a specific population and get some impact on that. If you say, well, I can't have the legislation pay for that. Yeah, there's no data. Well, Jolene, there is no data, but I just need a study to start it off, and I'll show you data because I think I will see it. But I need that study to start off, and that's what's been a drawback. I've been trying to pull this. It's only been a year, but for the last year, I've had people turn it down, and I've gone to different foundations. The Asian foundations is the one thing that Angie and I have struggled with. Right now, there is no Asian foundation that we've ever gone to that has ever said, okay, Jeff, we'll give you $100,000. This study, I'm asking $200,000, but whatever, something. Or, is Constant Wu is she gonna give us something? I don't even know. See, I don't even know high profile figures that are Asian, right? That's the other problem, right? Chrissy Yamaguchi, I kind of know, but I don't think she has 200,000. We don't have.
Well, I think it's the connections, right? Because there's so many Asian American Olympiads. Well, maybe, Chrissy was probably the, what these youngsters looks to. And so whether she has money or not, it's like talking to the other influencers, because there's Nathan Chen and there's that snowboarder who's like the best in the world, Chloe Kim. So it's those connections. I think making a list of all the things you need, so what I'm hearing the most is Asian Americans. We need to get into the Asian Americans to spread awareness and also to get some funding as well. Because I was thinking more of white people. We need NIH to recruit Asian Americans, and to have, to get an Asian American, you need to incentivize. Is there some money? Is there, there's some.
Even then, even then, Jolene, it's hard. I have a study right now on Asian American female non-smokers, and they get a $75 gift card to fill out a 20-minute survey. And even then, it's like so. But you're right. You need something. And I like where you're going with that. But that, to me, is secondary to getting our own people.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting pushback from our own people. It's kind of what Angie and I are trying to tell you. Like, you are on board with this, but and just nothing against you. We don't know if what's going to happen afterwards, right?
Yeah.
That's what we often see, is that we get in the door, and then the door's shut when it goes down to like, let's do something further. Let's do something. Let's do more. Let's hold this event. Let's go to a dinner. Let's go to like they stop. The contact all stops. They're very interested, but then for some reason, it's just not high on their advisory board. When they go meet with their head CEOs, they're kind of like, let's talk about mental health, or I don't know.
So it's really getting that push. So I think Dr. Velotta, putting what do you need, money, but in order to get the money, list out what those things are. And then Angie, what types of connections do you need? And I'll make a list I'll talk to the Washington State BRG and brainstorm and share the videos. I'll put in the newsletter. And there's a number I'll start sharing. There's Asians Now. I think talking to Next Shark, Asian American News, NBC America, and all these Asian American outlets. Are you familiar with these?
Some of them. I'm familiar with the NBC Asian America and this AAWPI that you just sent. I am familiar with that as well.
Okay, yeah. And so I'll share it for the audience, the Asian American Women Political Initiative. So there's so many different Asian American organizations. Somebody's going to care. And I think TAF is really the answer, the Asian American Foundation that funds all these different things, and they're the main source. So I'm going to continue to think on, and do you have a place, like a little treasure chest of information that people can share out? Is that like, we have a landing page that has the study or has layman's terms of what it is? Or
I wish.
Do you need one?
Not yet.
Okay, so you need a resource page. So a resource page that has, all your videos, Dr. Velotta, that you've done, and then some of the studies, because some people will be, Vietnamese dentists or Indian doctors or whatever, right? So have that so they can share with their friends. And Angie, what is it that you need? And I would say template out what you're doing inside of Kaiser, so then your colleagues and friends outside of Kaiser or in other Kaisers can share what you're doing. Because I'm not sure who I know. Oh, I do. Oh, my uncle's niece works at Kaiser. Okay, in Seattle. So if you can template out what you're doing, so then I can share with her and other medical providers, hey, this is the thing, share it out. So I see that we are at the hour, and I know that you are both very, very busy. So let's continue to talk about this, because I think we can get the awareness for Asian Americans. I do believe that. And there are some really strong bold Asians out there on LinkedIn. That's where they live. And I know who they are. I know some of them. So have some hope here. I have hope for that. I have not hope for other things. And is there a main receptacle where we can find you? Either one of you? Or you're both are busy or not trying to probably...
Velotta is on LinkedIn. He's very outspoken. Sometimes scares me.
Oh, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and stuff like that, but you're right. I think I like the idea we said. You're right. I don't have like a website or like a resource page. I am on LinkedIn, Twitter, and
okay. Thank you so much for your work. I think that this idea that, we can't get attention for it, and also Asians being quiet in the community. I mean, this is very standard across all industries. So we're gonna make this happen. So I appreciate it. Thank you to both of you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.